for the first time. So it'll be great. It'll be a great Thursday project. But first, I'd like to just go ahead and take a couple minutes to introduce the topic, what we're going to be speaking about today, and each of us, and then we'll get started, okay? All right, so today I just want to say thank you for joining us and being present. We know your time is precious and you have got a lot on your plate, and we just couldn't be more thrilled that you're spending time with us today. My name is Court, and I work here at Get Connected by Galaxy Digital and Creative Communications and Outreach. If you're not familiar with us, Get Connected is our best-in-class volunteer management software, and we use that to serve thousands of organizations across North America. And it's designed specifically to meet the needs of volunteer managers and their programs. So we really think about volunteer managers a lot. So you are our number one priority. We help the helpers do their good in the world. And so today we've got a panel presentation and discussion on the upward trend that we've been noticing in microvolunteerism. It's something that keeps showing up, especially as volunteers seek more flexible options and want the ease of finding out about opportunities and signing up for them via technology. So today we're going to cover specifically, what microvolunteerism is. It's going to be fun to say that over and over again. I've just now realized. And what are the benefits and challenges of microvolunteerism, and how you'll know if microvolunteerism is right for your program. And you'll stay tuned to the end, and we'll talk about the steps for implementing. So today on our panel, we've got Elizabeth Donovan, who's head of our Get Connected Networks team. She's responsible for connecting communities through technology and relationships. And today, I'm so pleased to have Addison Waters joining us for the first time. Addison's our lead content writer and researcher. She writes a lot of our resources that are like those really hard-hitting, just chock full of great volunteer management, practices, techniques, trends. Like, she's just really up on her research on that, and she creates a lot of our phenomenal ebooks and articles. And we also have Nate Barnes from our Get Connected Networks team joining us to manage the chat box where you can ask questions. And we're all going to just work together to create like a really beautiful, healthy, respectful space, uplifting to each other, knowing that we've got some folks on the webinar today who maybe are brand new to volunteer management, and those who have been doing this for a while. So we've got a really wide variety of experience and different types of organizations, a lot of diversity of organization. So this is where we get to be community together. And so with that, I'm going to attempt the fun part, or the responsibility of sharing the slides with you. So here I go.
It all comes down to it. Can she pull it off?
Yay! Can I do it? I think I've got it. All right. So again, here we are with microvolunteerism, how to know if this latest trend is right for your organization. So again, here's what we'll cover today. We really want to discover if microvolunteerism is right for your program. It may or may not be a good fit for every program that is out there or every type of volunteerism, but we really want to kind of get down to the nitty-gritty of what is microvolunteerism, what are the benefits, challenges, and the future of this trend, and how you could begin implementing it in your program. So stay tuned to the end for practical how-tos to start your own microvolunteerism opportunities. So we're going to go over a few topics: why it's important to pay attention to microvolunteerism as a trend, how are small efforts important to your greater impact, and what tools are necessary for leveraging the power of microvolunteerism. It's a quote that I really love. How wonderful is it that nobody need wait a single moment before starting to improve the world, from Anne Frank. And I think that really is, the spirit of microvolunteerism. So, oops. I love it when I go too quickly through the slides. That's really fun. So you got a sneak peek. Addison, I'd really like to turn this over to you, because you were really the one who brought this, growing trend, to the group to share, like, here's what I'm seeing out in the world. And so I'd really love for you to just share what is microvolunteerism with our audience.
Yeah, I love this topic because it's something that I've been seeing a lot. I've been seeing the words microvolunteering a lot through my research, but it's also something that we've all been doing for uh, since time, the beginning of time, which is really cool. And it's actually a really simple concept with a fancy title. Um, so it's like I said, it's something that we've been doing forever, but we now have a word to formalize the idea that small acts of good can add up to achieve significant impact. So when you help a neighbor mow their lawn, when you deliver meals to new parents, when you donate your clothing that you no longer wear, or even reshare a post on social media about a cause that you're passionate about, these are all acts of micro volunteering. So the idea is that you're doing a small act of good, a small act of kindness that adds up to achieve greater impact. And how does this apply to your organization? Your challenge as a nonprofit, as a community organization, a volunteer program, is to harness the power of these small acts and focus these actions toward a single cause or a project. So unlike helping a neighbor in your spare time, your goal with microvolunteering is to really formalize this concept and measure that impact and focus that impact towards a common goal for your organization. And so it's not a super complicated, it's super achievable for your organization. But I just love this idea that everyone can do something in their communities, no matter how small, and it makes a difference.
I love that explanation, Addie, because I know when Court brought this, I was like, great, I have no idea what microvolunteerism is. This is another thing I've got to learn, and it sounds very daunting. So I think that was the piece that I loved about learning more of it, is it does actually fit, and I'll chime in more along the way, it fits me really well, because as you said, like these full-time mothers, full-time working adults, how do you give back? And I think, one of the conferences I attended that MAVA put on was talking about how the word volunteer, you'll ask a good portion of the community out there, do you volunteer? And they will say no. They'll say, I don't volunteer. I absolutely take meals to my neighbor who's sick. I'm mowing the lawn of the people across the street. I'm donating clothing. I'm involved with the book drive. I don't volunteer, because to them, taking care of community is taking care of community. It's not volunteering. So I think that one, it's good that we don't have to pronounce it too much. I think the concept's going to be so interesting to learn about today. And then think about, what is that vernacular to use instead of micro-volunteerism recruitment. You're going to be talking about, how do we take the everyday good that people naturally want to do and care so much about, and translate it into your nonprofit, into the work you're doing that will be measurable and impactful for how you have to also gather more force to kind of come toward the cause you're working on.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So why is microvolunteerism important? Very similar to, what we just touched on. It's really rooted in these small acts of service that, again, as Addison pointed out, as your challenge is going to be to make a cumulative impact. So to focus those small acts of service. The microvolunteerism sort of is done on like a very ad hoc basis. And it's an ideal solution for busy people, as Elizabeth pointed out, who still have a strong desire to do good. And a lot of those words that everyone was dropping into the chat, who still have a strong desire to connect to community, to make an impact, all of those things. And it provides flexible opportunities for volunteers to begin their relationship with your organization, which we'll talk about that a little bit more. So here's some fun things about microvolunteerism trends. The number one is actually, I believe, the ease of engagement. Would you say that's accurate, Addison? The ease of engagement and quickness of action to take?
Yeah, I think the idea really here is to get people who are busy, who are not used to formally volunteering, maybe anyone who wants to get involved, but maybe a little intimidated by full-scale volunteering. This is something that's super achievable for people anyone in your community, which I really like. And so it's a way to sort of cast a wider net to attract sort of a wider range of perspectives and people, and get them started. Let them dip their toes in the water a little bit.
Yeah, and that age group diversity is really a part of it too, because I think with using a lot more technology to be able to just like quickly do something in 5 minutes, you're sort of opening up a lot of different types of accessibility for people who have different needs. And also, age group, like I would say Gen Z is loving doing good, and they tend to do a lot of good through apps. So that's something that's really interesting that we'll talk about a little bit more. And it's really great for first-time volunteers. And something that I've really been thinking about a lot is how can we use microvolunteerism efforts to re-engage lapsed volunteers? I know that that's been a big challenge for a lot of volunteer managers over the last couple of years. People had to take a step back from in-person volunteering for the reasons that we're all very keenly aware of. And this is a chance of being able to kind of loop those members of your community back in and maybe start them off small if they're still feeling tentative about signing up for a full in-person shift. And then Elizabeth, you had brought up a really great idea about utilizing microvolunteerism for corporate partners. Mm-hmm. Did you want to touch on that at all?
Yeah, and I'll kind of chime in on one of the chat questions too about, I think what I love about microvolunteerism is it is a very low threshold to start. You don't have to think about thoroughly vetting these volunteers because they're not necessarily going to be coming in to work with an at-risk population. So for corporate partners, the couple examples came to mind was one is just a friend of mine who lost her daughter to cancer. So there's a piece that she's been really passionate about supporting called Crowns of Courage. And what was really interesting about it is it started with a very simple idea that she wanted to do a fundraiser for Crowns of Courage. They do free wigs for kids going through cancer. And it was very, very simple the way she started because she used her Facebook presence just to say, hey, I've got a salon that's going to do this type of work on this special day, sign up for an appointment. So she was tapping her friends and her family and her community on Facebook. And then she went from there to involving corporate partners where she reached out to more salons because they got so much interest. They needed more salons to take part. She reached out to media sponsors where the local news station picked up the story. She reached out for raffle items where different corporate partners started to put together things that then people could respond to. And so I think the example that we gave at the beginning, I was out of town that day, so I was kind of bummed, but I also wanted so badly to take part because I've been following this for almost 3-4 months where she organized this thing and was just updating the group and taking new elements. And by the end of it, I could promote it on my social media. I could register for the raffle. So I had a way to fund into the donations she was collecting. I could share the media updates afterwards when she thanked those corporate partners. But it was very much just pulling together who wanted to take part and then thinking about how she was going to thank them or promote them so they felt good about the story that came into the social media about how that company engaged, that salon engaged, that raffle item was donated. But I think when you think about how do you make it simple enough for any organization, another example that comes to mind is just there's a homeless shelter in our town that's called A Hope, and it's for women and children. So it's specifically for women and children going through homelessness. And they did a fundraiser last summer that came to mind this morning. My daughter was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, well, remember that thing we did? Again, short on time. I like and I think more about where I donate, frankly, right now than where I spend my time because I don't have a lot of extra time. But this was kind of a project in a box idea where the A-Hope passed out via churches and companies and groups, just little, kind of for the kids, like a little can to collect the funds in. And then they had cards. This is our mission. And so, our family and 3 other neighbors did a bake sale where we got each of them, took my children for an hour, it was beautiful, and made cookies. And then they went and they made, each of these items. And then we had our wagon and we went around the neighborhood. But it was an advocacy opportunity because each house that we stopped at, the girls gave their pitch. They read that card. Here's how we're supporting A-Hope. This is what the funds are going to go toward. We never stepped foot on A-Hope's property. We were not qualified as volunteers, but we went to 20 houses where they said that, and now I have to level down their expectations because people were paying $20 for a cookie, or they donated by check because they wanted to support the cause and encourage my children in doing good citizenship. So that part of just making it a tangible doable effort where somebody can donate a baked good, they can inspire a family, they have the mission statement on the card. That's what made the difference. So we weren't just doing a bake sale, but that small piece incorporated an entire community. Now my neighborhood knows about this mission, and a lot of those people actually were hearing about it for the first time. So learning about the mission, following it, checking it out inside, and coming back out to catch up with us to give more money, that part was really impressive to me. So I think it's figuring out something simple that you can then tap into that can tell your story to a new audience. And those people who want to help in little ways are often your donators, they're your fundraisers, they're your advocates. They can't show up inside, but they are going to be able to do so much for you in a community story.
Yeah, I think that's
you probably want a court.
I actually think that's a really amazing example that kind of leads into, the benefits and challenges of microvolunteerism, as the question in the chat box was bringing up a really great point. Like, what if we have qualifications and vetting? And so it does require a little bit of, kind of rethinking with a little creativity and ingenuity, where can I fit somebody in so that I can tap into the benefits of microvolunteerism and kind of circumvent the challenges. And, I think that the card is brilliant because they got these amazing kids to, the kids are educated now, the kids have educated their neighbors. And sometimes you're just down the street from an organization that you have no idea is even there. So, really leveraging the power of micro volunteers, like people who are willing to share your story. That's makes a huge difference, actually. And I'll say that this is actually probably the same form of micro volunteerism I do all the time, because I have most of my volunteer on-site hours committed to one place. And I'm very busy too. So when I see opportunities come through that I cannot participate in, the first thing I do is send them to people I think of. And that's a way that I can give to those organizations that right now, they don't know I'm even doing that. They don't know that I follow them on social media and I'm sharing those things personally with my friends, right? So additionally, like these benefits, it's like the flexibility. So it's great for somebody with a really busy schedule and needing accessible opportunity to support your organization. And number two, this is the best one, it expands your potential pool and helps you scale your efforts. It's very hard to think that a 5-minute something or other, or even 30 seconds of somebody just sharing a social media post can actually expand your pool, but it really does. Additionally, repeat. People will 2/3, this is from third sector research, 2/3 of microvolunteers are likely to repeat that same activity because it has this fourth benefit here of an instantaneous feel-good gratification that happens, leaving the volunteer really uplifted and feeling ready to do more. And so that's amazing. And also, Addie, I really want you to talk about sort of the global benefit here, especially with this unique app.
Yeah, so when I was researching microvolunteerism, I came across there's a really great TED Talks, which I think Nate has for you. It's the Be My Eyes app. And the whole idea behind the Be My Eyes app started with the idea of microvolunteerism. And their tagline is small acts of kindness with global impact. So, and actually the founder of this project kind of, I think, coined this term microvolunteerism. I think it was him. And he wanted a way to make good from all the time that we spend on our smartphones, scrolling through social media, like Court said, and so on. And so he developed an app called Be My Eyes, which connects blind or low vision people with volunteers from around the world. I think they currently accommodate 150 languages or something. So let's say someone is at a grocery store and they need to check a food label, but they're vision impaired, low vision. So they'll quickly log on to this app, which will enable their camera access, and it connects them with a volunteer automatically, whoever's logged in currently, and the volunteer can read the label for them, maybe have a quick chat. And these kinds of acts only take a few minutes for volunteers, even a few seconds, but these minutes make a huge difference in the lives of app users. And actually, since launching in 2015, they've had nearly 6 million volunteers use the app. Another great example that you might be familiar with about 8 years ago was the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. And since then, contributions have added up to, it might even be more now, up to $115 million in research funding, which has actually dramatically accelerated research for ALS, which is so cool, because even a few dollars, it's actually changing the face of research for this disease. So while you may not have the resources to develop a new app, or like this prospect of going viral is a little bit daunting for some of us, but these are just examples of how you can get creative to leverage these small acts of kindness to make a massive impact. And we'll talk later more about how to make microvolunteerism more achievable for your organization. But those are just some really successful and really exciting examples of microvolunteerism.
And Elizabeth, I know you already touched a little bit on relationships, and we had a lot of folks mentioning in the chat community. But how do you feel about this as a benefit? Like, have you noticed that, this is what you're seeing in networks, is that people are wanting to build relationships with partners, employees, corporate?
No, I think it's that moment that you said before, like the instant feel-good gratification. I think that relationship of doing something that matters. We've talked about, scrolling through a cell phone and how you find yourself. It's a joke now for our current age and time of how many hours just disappear. That moment of knowing, instead of that, I did something that was relationship building or promoted something or made me feel good. I think that piece of just drawing together like-minded employees to work together on something, like-minded groups to come together on something. And it can be very small. I was thinking that, that Crowns of Courage one, it's a interesting, tangible thing that you can see the immediate benefit for a child, but it's a thing. And so it's almost like if you are a nonprofit working on, research for cancer or children's support during going through a medical crisis, finding something like that is very tangible is, again, where you can partner with other nonprofits with similar causes. If they have something that's much easier to track or kind of put into a microvolunteerism experience, you can still have both causes, both companies, both groups benefiting from kind of helping each other drive awareness. And sometimes that, even in and of itself, there's just so many ways to approach it, because that community relationship we're talking about, where I feel like I made a difference, I feel like I supported my friend, I feel like I probably need to put into the chat. I'll put the little hashtag. Now I know how to use hashtags. I'll put it in the chat. But like those moments of bringing awareness to a cause someone's never heard of that they also care about or can support. Yeah, it's so powerful.
Yeah, and that's community and relationship building, when people connect over these causes, even if it's just for a few moments. Mm-hmm. So here are the challenges, because let's be real, like this could be a challenging concept to apply. And it, volunteer management has a unique set of challenges. Microvolunteerism, as a subset of that, has a unique set of challenges. So let's talk about those, and let's talk about, what are some ways to move through those. So retention, that's a constant challenge in volunteerism. So how do you foster retention, repeat volunteerism, and really help these volunteers stay connected, and also to build their relationship with your organization. So that can be a challenge. I do think that some of the systems and tools we'll recommend can support that, but let's be real, that's always a challenge for our volunteer managers. Adapting, knowing which of your current opportunities you can break apart and create microvolunteerism, or like create new opportunities. That might actually be the greatest challenge, is really figuring out how to adapt, and if it's going to be, a good strategy for you to, kind of play that long game and say, like, I'm introducing and expanding my network by introducing these smaller volunteerism opportunities, but just really figuring out and knowing what of your current offerings you could adapt, or how you could create new microvolunteerism opportunities, with the hope of re-engaging lapsed volunteers or expanding your pool of current volunteers. So there is a resource that we've created for you that I'm excited to send along to you that's going to really help with that, adapting. And then systems, getting your necessary systems in place, because it seems like, well, this is a little cumbersome. I've got to have a whole system in place just to get somebody to donate 5 minutes of their time. But I think it's one of those things, if you can really like get that nice and clean and tight, then you can make, recruiting, onboarding, training, and all of that very quick and accessible. And also just the volunteerism, even that, 5 minutes to an hour of volunteerism, which is sort of the definition of microvolunteerism, anything that's like an hour or less. So getting those systems in place to make sure that that's actually easy for you and actually helping you move forward the mission of your program. And then technology, needing to adopt new smart technology systems that specialize in volunteerism and allow for microvolunteerism, because not all of us are going to be able to create our own custom app. So how can we do that? All right. So here's the question. Will microvolunteerism work for your program? These are the considerations that come up most when it comes to microvolunteerism. Does this opportunity require any type of in-person contact? Does it require qualifications, special skills, training, vetting, anything like a background check, right? These are things that you have to think about that are vital for your program. But how does microvolunteerism fit into all of these sometimes cumbersome qualifications, that we have to keep in place? So if the opportunity requires, 2 or more of these things, it might be challenging to adapt that specific opportunity. But is there a way of creating smaller, supportive, or adjacent opportunities to support that main opportunity? And that's where the brainstorming resource is going to come into play for you.
Or I'll just jump in and add. So like if you're engaging these pro bono, these skilled volunteers, like medical volunteers that require lots of training, maybe there's not a place for microvolunteerism in this sort of cause, in this project. But instead, maybe you also want to fundraise for your organization, or other smaller initiatives that can still aid this program. Then maybe you will be able to identify quick opportunities for volunteers to still get involved. So not everything, like you said, is adaptable. You're not going to be able to introduce microvolunteerism for all of your programs, but you can certainly start out small and identify, and fundraising is a great place to start, like Elizabeth's example, because it's fairly easy, it's shareable, and it's easy to sort of mass recruit in that way. Thank you.
Yeah, and if you wanted to keep going on that same thought there, Addie, and go through these first few examples of microvolunteerism opportunities, because I feel like what you're saying about fundraising really kind of blends really well here into donations, and how all of the things surrounding donations can actually be a form of microvolunteerism.
Yeah, I actually want to give you another example from my personal life. So like a lot of us, I was really heartbroken and frustrated after the news of mass shootings. And I have a little one at home, and I just kept feeling really powerless. But as you know, when you have a 10-month-old, you don't have a lot of time, which I do at home. So I wanted to try to figure out something to do. I bought the t-shirt, I gave a little bit of money, but I didn't feel like that was enough. So I went on, you're probably all familiar with Everytown. I went on Everytown's website, clicked on their volunteer page, and they immediately gave you like 3 options for on the screen. It was really clean, really easy. And I think the options were like, I have 5 minutes a week, I have an hour, and I have 3 hours. And I selected the shortest amount of time. I was being realistic with myself. And within a day or two, I received an email. It was probably automated. It's something that you can do to really streamline that process. So you're not sending out a million individualized emails. And so one day a week, 5 minutes a week, I can make phone calls to advocate for this cause. And so it feels, from the volunteer's perspective, it feels like I'm doing something to help. Even if it's not a lot, if I can call one person and change their mind 5 minutes a week, that to me is a win. And that's sort of the spirit and the point of microvolunteering, is to really capture those people that you wouldn't normally. So, maybe they're a bit thrown off by the fact that they don't have an hour a week. 5 minutes, that's achievable for even a mom of a baby. And it's just also one example of how you can start thinking about creating and organizing your opportunities. That to me was really effective. Having, maybe a call to action or something that says, I have 5 minutes to help, but I want to help. Click here below to view all of our 5-minute opportunities or something like that. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. You don't need to develop an app by yourself. You can use your existing infrastructure that you have, whether it's your volunteer site, your volunteer platform, whatever you're currently using. Maybe it's through email, and you say, create that really clear call to action. And I think you'll find that people will respond pretty well. And even your lapsed volunteers, you send them a quick email. That can be really effective. So, and these, examples of opportunities, making a phone call, signing a petition. If you need documents translated for non-English speakers, that's a really great one. And the key here is finding these small opportunities where you can trust anyone to accomplish these tasks. So things that are pretty low stakes if someone makes a mistake. Responding to a survey is a great one, distributing posters, collecting donations. That's all simple but impactful tasks that you can leverage here.
Yeah, I love that example of putting a box, like putting a donations box at your office.
Yeah.
And just letting people know, like, we'll have donations boxes out front of our organization. You can pick them up and take them to your office on these dates and then bring them back on these dates. And that's great because that might only take somebody 15 minutes of their time. And maybe they just say to their coworkers, like, hey, I've got this donation box here. I'm collecting clothes, or I'm collecting toys, or I'm collecting food, whatever it is. And then they can drop it back off. And, that doesn't really require a whole lot of really complex instructions or vetting. And that's a way they can contribute. And I know Elizabeth and I talked about the community garden. If you want to talk about a few of these examples as well.
Yeah, no, and I can't quite remember when we get into kind of how do you track this, but I think we talk a little bit like the icebreaker ALS challenge that Addison mentioned. Like it was fun. So it's like, how can you make this something shareable and fun? And, I was thinking about, like, it's very difficult to kind of capture that person who's going to go out and tend the garden. I think, Court, you had an example of your own life where you go by and just check on the horse's water levels one last time. Like, it's fast. You don't even know Court was there. So that tending of a garden, like, how can you make that something silly where it's like you're taking, pictures of the weed pile that you pulled out and comparing it to somebody else's, and it's all getting posted that Court's weed pile isn't as big as my weed pile. So it's fun and it's interactive and you're challenging each other. And I think, donations, whether you're measuring how high the stack of books is, or if you're just thinking about ways that you can have something that's fun, but you can measure, because now I can say, okay, we're going to count this size pile of weed as, 10 minutes of time, or this inches of books is going to equal this much time collecting them. So I can turn things into that volunteer measurement, but getting something that's shareable. I mean, the chalk drawing challenges with hashtags is just so much fun for kids in the summer where the parents are trying to get them outside to do something. So they draw their mural and they hashtag it and they post it on your Facebook page, and all of that leads to a donation page, or all of that leads to that simple sign up Addison was saying, where it's like, you got 5 more minutes, here's a list of 3 things we really need help with, so that you're feeding them from one simple activity to another, and nothing feels daunting. But you're starting to get this following, this pool of people that, again, they may only ever donate, they may never volunteer, or they may start to be more and more interested and send other people your way, and you don't even realize where the source of volunteers is coming from, but you've touched them in a way that brought a relationship to the work they were naturally doing anyways.
Yeah, absolutely. And a couple of my favorite things, I love the digital opportunities because I love to be all on the digital communications and the social media. And I think that's one of the simplest ways that that someone can share and participate in microvolunteerism remotely and use maybe their professional skills. Actually, like this could be a pro bono volunteer scheduling social media posts, or just somebody who wants to share, because that's a really great way for you to expand your network and your community. I find out about things all the time from sharing. But I do love that example of making it fun too, because it's really nice. Like people do really love to connect with people over what they care about. And it's kind of like finding out someone that you get along with or you work with, likes the same band as you. It's kind of when you see somebody share a cause that they care about on social media, it's like that feeling of community, that kindred spirit, like, oh, I care about that too, and that can be an exciting prospect for a lot of people to sort of realize that maybe they have more in common with others than they even knew, just because of these simple acts of microvolunteerism. And I can tell you, I volunteered at a nonprofit farm, and we do require a lot of vetting because you can't work with the large animals unless you've been through training and you've signed forms and all of these things, right? But if you stop by and you want to do something to help, let me tell you, there is always a task I can put you to cleaning. You can sweep something really quickly, and that might only take you 5 minutes, and I'm happy to put a broom in your hands if that's all you have. So what are the systems for making microvolunteerism work? Okay, first things first, how do we recruit for microvolunteerism? This is a whole, we've touched on this a little bit, but I really love that example that Addison shared, that call to action. It's like, got 5 minutes of time? And it's like, well, yeah, that's actually all I have. So I probably need to click on that. And then having a very specific system for recruiting these micro volunteers so that people know, like, this is flexible, virtual, ad hoc, ongoing, easy. And one of the things that Addison has pointed out to me, using a more broad recruitment technique as opposed to a, very specified, skill set techniques. Like phone calls, and almost anyone would be willing to make a phone call. And then communication, so ensuring your communications are done digitally. Addison also mentioned earlier the autoresponder email, like just clicking that 5-minute opportunity and then receiving that email that's like, here are your instructions. I would wager to bet that they even provided a script to help you know what to say. Because if you're anything like me, you get on the phone and you think, I only use this telephone to text people. I don't know how to talk on the phone anymore. Unless I'm seeing everyone on Zoom, right? So really just having that communication set up in advance, like, what's going to happen. Here's your autoresponder. Here's how you participate, and making sure that you also know how the volunteer can communicate to you that they've completed the task, right? So, and that brings us to our next very fun system, is reporting. How do you account for each of these small acts so that you can actually do what it is that you need to do as a volunteer manager and report on the cumulative effect? Because what if somebody only gives 15 minutes a week? Well, that's actually an hour a month and 12 hours a year. And if you have 100 people doing that, that's 120 extra volunteer hours that might be going not untracked, right? And you might want that in your report. You might want that to help you, talk about the impact that your program is making, and also to potentially, obtain funding at some point for your program and to make a greater impact with your mission. So counting 15 minutes at a time doesn't feel like a big deal. And you can use a variety of different tools to do that. So microvolunteerism recruiting, big recommendation, take it digital. For small acts of volunteerism, you'll want to implement something like a volunteer website or a page on your organization's website, or even a mobile app. And make sure that all your recruiting messages are really clear on the differences of, like, this is a micro opportunity, versus like, this is a minimum of a 2 to 4 hour opportunity. And I kind of come back to that example that Addison gave, because it's just so clear. It's like, got 5 minutes. Love that. So clear, so simple. A lot of people could raise their hand to that. And and then
That's
have all
interesting
that
on Court.
registration kind of
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, go ahead.
That 5 minutes is really interesting too, because what she said though is it's not just once, weekly she's doing it 5 minutes. So I think that idea that you're not just working to get 5 minutes of time, think about one where they'll sign up to do that weekly, and you've got a reminder that's automated that's just like, have you done it yet? Thanks so much, your 5 minutes is adding up. You know, we're going to be able to turn in this amount of hours for more funding at the end of this year because of your 5 minutes each week, so that they don't start to be like, oh, that one phone call doesn't matter, but they're seeing this cumulative effort. I just wanted to point that out, like it's billed for cumulative, which is really nice.
That's so true, because when someone does raise their hand and say they're giving just 5 minutes a week, that's 5 minutes times like 52 weeks a year. And that's a lot more, you know, that's 52 times they're making that phone call. And it is a big deal. It is a big deal. It really does make a difference.
And when we were, Elizabeth, I might be stealing something that you're going to mention later, but when we were talking about this and planning for this webinar, Elizabeth brought up the point that, you know, we're seeing more and more monthly donations rather than annual donations. And it's sort of that same concept, that breaking down volunteering into smaller bite-sized chunks is a lot more manageable for some people. Even, you know, it can be a lot to ask someone for 4 hours a month. 5 minutes a week is pretty achievable for a lot of people. So it's just that same idea that we can sort of provide almost this like subscription service to volunteering, which is pretty cool. And it's kind of exciting, and it makes me feel optimistic about getting people, especially, you know, younger people who are in college, right out of college, super busy, and you're trying to find ways to engage them. This is a really great avenue.
Yeah, I love that. It kind of makes me chuckle a little bit, but I was thinking the same thing too when you were talking. I was like, it's like subscription volunteerism, because, you know, a lot of people pay just like $10 a month or whatever it is Netflix costs. I don't know, but you don't think about it, right? Because it's so small, but it also makes you happy every day because you know you got Netflix. So I think it's like one of those things where it's like, well, I know I'm going to give my 5 minutes and it's going to make me feel good. It's going to make me feel that even though my life as a volunteer, you know, it's like maybe I'm a micro volunteer because my life is so busy, but at least I'm doing something. And in a world that can feel really overwhelming to us as individuals, no matter what your job is, it really does, I think, in a lot of ways, help people feel hopeful. Like Addison was mentioning, like it makes me feel hopeful that I can participate in something that I truly believe in. So that's kind of why I feel like it's worth like having that creative conversation of what could we do that can engage a new generation of volunteers or re-engage lapsed volunteers, or my volunteers who had to take a step back because they had a family emergency. Let me give them something because they still care so much, right? So I want to give them something because they don't want to lapse. They don't want to become disconnected from the community and the cause they care about. So let me find something. And with some of those people who are previously vetted, you might be able to offer them something a little different as a microvolunteerism opportunity than you would for somebody who's brand new, right? So there might be some micro opportunities that you offer just to those folks who have already been previously vetted and just need to kind of stay in contact with your organization, even though they may be going through challenges within their own lives, right? And I think that really again, streamlining the whole process, like the registration, the communication, everything that your volunteer is going to need to know to participate is going to be communicated as efficiently as possible. And this is really where thinking through the full process, and again, in that planning guide that we're going to provide you after the presentation is going to help. Thinking through that full process of how are they going to find out about it? How are they going to participate? And how are they going to let us know? So you'll do the whole process and just kind of condense it, recruit, onboard, train, communicate, all of that, just make it small too, just like the microvolunteerism, because you want them to be able to take action quickly and easily. And then tracking and reporting. So find a reporting system that works best for your program. One of the things I've seen people do is just use very simple hash marks, right? Like, so if every time somebody pulls weeds, maybe that counts for 15 minutes, hash mark, and then you add them all up later, okay? Or a check mark or something. Or perhaps you have volunteers log in on an app that automatically just counts their minutes, and then they can log back out again and send them to your database. This is actually a little screenshot of our volunteer software's app that our organizations use that does just that. We're really excited about all of the updates we've done over the last year on the app, because it just has made it more flexible for people to be able to engage in this new trend of microvolunteerism. All right, here we are. We're coming, we're doing it. We're going to be on time. I believe in us today. So here's the 3 takeaways to get started with microvolunteerism. So determine where microvolunteerism fits into your program. And again, that planning guide, microvolunteerism planning guide that Addison and I put together for you, I'm going to email that to everyone after the presentation. And it'll come with the recording and all the resources, but you're going to want to take a look at your current programming and see where is the space to adapt some of the opportunities that you already have, or add new opportunities that are supportive yet flexible. We're going to have a checklist for you that's going to help you go through every single task in all of your opportunities to see if you can turn any of them into microvolunteerism. It's going to help you gauge all of these factors, these commonalities that microvolunteer opportunities have. Again, you want to build your microvolunteerism process. So all those steps that a volunteer typically would have to go through, we're just shrinking it and making it more quick, more accessible. And that'll be in the microvolunteerism planning guide as well. And then the most important part is you really want to communicate your microvolunteerism initiative. Just like that call to action on that website that Addison was more than happy to click. You really need to find a place on your volunteer site, if you have volunteer management software or a website, communicate through newsletter or email that you are offering a new initiative, and really denote how it's a little bit different than some of your opportunities. I really think this is an excellent chance to reinvigorate those lapsed volunteers. So you might want to send like a really special targeted messages just to them. Like, hey, I know that maybe we missed out on your presence for the last couple of years. Things have been intense and we understand that your time is busy, but do you have 5 minutes? We've got something for you, because they might be like relieved actually that there's a way that they can contribute and be a part again. And that is something that I've noticed just in talking to other people, is they were like, I was so relieved to find there was something I could do.
I encourage you, Court, with that first topic, just that brainstorm outside yourself, because hopefully you're picking up a few ideas from us, but just like you do with social media, if you're going to try to do this on Facebook, grab a couple teenagers, grab a couple volunteers, take them to lunch, and just throw crazy ideas at the wall. Because I think that's where you start to see, you know, my friend was getting a haircut, and that's how her whole big program started, because she and her stylist were like, we wish we could do something, maybe we can do something. So that moment of like, sometimes it is just asking those other voices, don't just pull from within, because I know my best ideas come from the people I work with and care about and brainstorm with, and sometimes it's the 10th idea that's the best one. So, you know, like just beat it up, but get other voices in the room with you, particularly voices that like the platform you're thinking about using, or are of the generation, a couple of lapsed volunteers, to be like, what are the simple things you would like to see us offer to get you re-engaged? We know there's like 50 of you. I'm asking you, tell me what would have helped you, and then pick their brains first. That can really inform what's going to make the best sense for your program.
Absolutely. I would totally agree. And I also think, you know, it can sound a little bit intimidating.
If you disagreed, I've been like, mute her. That was brilliant.
I disagree. I completely agree. And I also just want to reiterate that you don't need to reinvent the wheel also. You know, like if you have the infrastructure in place that's working for you, you know, you have your volunteer platform that you're already using, or you have, you know, your email newsletters that you're sending out. Use that structure and then just sort of adapt instead of creating. I mean, you don't need to create a new app. You don't need to sink billions of dollars into, you know, a new structure, a new system, whatever. But use what you have and just update and adapt. And I think that's kind of the key here, is making these micro opportunities achievable for you.
I love it. I just am like, get a little creative, get adaptive, and make it achievable. Those are some really great points to remember, because I feel like there's just always this idea that there's more we should do. And that feels not good. So I love that you're just reminding us to just use what it is that we have. You probably already have a process and you're just going to make it a little simpler. And this will be your bonus take action is we're going to get you that guide in the follow-up email and you can brainstorm your microvolunteerism opportunities. One of the things that we talked about in last month's social media webinar, which was social media for your volunteer program, is creating a digital ambassadors program. That's like a whole program that is microvolunteerism based, just people resharing your social content and inviting people to take a look at your organization. And so I really like that idea because it's just so simple. And if you need support with digital communications, really great microvolunteerism opportunity. So just figuring out where would it make more sense to have some volunteer power on these like small little pieces of time. Yeah, and that's us. Elizabeth, do you want to wrap us up? Do we have any questions in the chat? We have a couple more minutes. We have about 5 more minutes or so. I think I'm really proud of us for going on time here today. It's big work.
No, and I like that, Todd. If anyone does have anything that you've tried or any ideas, happy to just kind of take some questions and have some brainstorming here. But yeah, it was one that it was funny to me, at least, personally, as hopefully everybody's starting to chat, that I was like, oh, scary new topic. And then as soon as you explained it, I was like, oh, this is the thing that I do feel like I'm able to do quite often. So that when people ask me where do you volunteer, the little things like this, these are the ones that I immediately am off the cuff. Those are the things I talk about I do, because I am just doing them in very, very small ways, but very passionate ways. I care, and that's what I can give, and it makes me feel like I'm involved and I am a supporter of that cause or that nonprofit.
Absolutely. And Nate's going to drop in the chat box the info on how to connect with us, and I'll let Elizabeth share a little bit more about us. Thanks, Nate, for doing that, and thank you each for your time, your attention, your presence. And if you have any other questions or thoughts on microvolunteerism, we're here for you. Please do look for an email from us coming no later than Monday with the recording and all of these bonus resources.
And I think, Court, you kind of stated who we are really well when we started, we help the helpers. So I think that piece of we're technically a volunteer management software. And I love that we are that organization structural tool that goes beyond just a person, but everything the person's building can be really empowering their nonprofit during their time with that nonprofit. And if they move on, then the next person has something to come into that's organized and ready to hit the ground running. But overall, I think, what we're learning and what I love about each of our jobs and being able to be here with you is we're learning every day, and we're seeing what people are doing on the East Coast that we can share with the West Coast, that this nonprofit is trying or this segment is trying, and what's working. And there's just power between a community, a national, North American community, one day larger communities pulling together just to share with each other what's working in their community so that everybody can really come together and know best practices. I think that's the part we find most rewarding about our jobs, is when we hear your stories of you took something that Addison thought sounded smart and that I thought could be done, and you took it out there and you actually did it. And those are the stories that, if nothing else, I know that info out, we'd love just to hear back hey, I tried this and it worked, or I tried this, it does not work, please never mention that again. I think that piece of us just always learning and growing with you is the exciting part of our jobs.
And we love to talk about it. We love to talk, as you can see. So we'd love to hear your thoughts, your feedback. It helps us to learn more, like Elizabeth said as well.
I really love this example that somebody dropped in the chat about asking volunteers to write encouraging letters to youth whom are without a family within the juvenile justice field. And if it's this is a great example, the name of the volunteer and the youth are not mentioned within the letter, but the simple act of asking somebody to write an encouraging handwritten letter. I mean, that's a great example. It's actually reminding me of when I was a kid and we created cards. And I remember that we just made specific cards for different types of holidays or occasions, and then brought them to a place. So, and our names weren't in them, the people's names weren't in them, but somebody received a handmade card. This is amazing.
I was just going to say to Nadja, yeah, it's a great question there. And I think if you want to send your name to us, please do. I know there's some intent on our end to start pulling together some internal groups and kind of focus groups for each other so that more of our clients and more nonprofits can interact with each other. But if anybody else knows a group where you've been going for support or advice, feel free to drop into that. I think that there's often, as Lindley's bringing out, there's often like a nonprofit association per state that we have some forums that you could join. But I think if there are other ideas or someone knows of something, please do bring that to play in the chat if you're still here.
And I think, Nadja, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're located in the UK, and there is a group, Court, you probably know more about it on LinkedIn.
On LinkedIn.
Correct? You're going to share about that? Go ahead.
I can't remember what it's named, but I do know that there is a group on LinkedIn specifically for UK volunteer managers.
Excellent.
I've been following a lot of those groups, and there's some really great camaraderie and like just really good information sharing and resource sharing amongst volunteer coordinators, and also just a lot of encouragement. Because I do feel like you're right. Like we could be the person at our organization with the head down, just working, getting all the stuff done, and really just getting that chance to like network and ask others what's going on. It's nice to come together and be able to do those things. And a lot of times doing it online is one of the easiest ways to be able to build it into your schedule. Thank you so much.
Some good other thought leaders out there too. Like I know I mentioned MAVA, that's the Minnesota AVAs. We always kind of laugh at AVAs. They're typically your state and an AVA, but those associations tend to have some really good thought leadership. I know Points of Light is another just really great educational foundation. You can follow some of the things that they put out in their newsletters for just ideas and best practices. But I think finding a couple of those that just resonate with the material you're seeing, I think that's what I love about our Volunteer Management Insider. To tout, Addison and Court and some of our other writers a little bit more, they just have really good practical advice on how to take something and implement it. So finding a good newsletter or two that you can just follow and kind of glean from. If it applies, great. If it doesn't, next month, just pass it by and pick it up the next month. I think those are really good resources to just kind of choose wisely what you're bringing in. So you're always getting some fresh ideas, just reminding you, as Court said, to pick up your head every once in a while, look around just a second or two and be like, is there something I can change so that as I go back to head down working, I can be a little more efficient, a little more effective so that I could reach that community and build those relationships in a much more human to human. I think we just forget sometimes that person to person connection is just so powerful. So letters, things that have that human element is just so important.
Yeah.
See that. Sorry, Court. I just see that Carmen in the chat is saying that she's building volunteer recruitment where it doesn't exist. And, something that we're noticing is that volunteer leaders and people in the nonprofit world are just so hungry for camaraderie and information and sharing these ideas. And so I, as a writer who write our blog, I follow our blog, of course, and also lots of other blogs. I have a few favorites that I've just subscribed to, and that's really cool, a cool way to just gather as much information as possible. So definitely, and Facebook groups are great, even from a personal level, like if we just moved to a new town and there's a family Facebook group, and it's really great just to know that there are other families out there that are looking for the same thing or looking for friendship or information and that kind of thing. So any of those resources like LinkedIn is awesome as well. Are really, really helpful.
Well, I just want to go ahead and make sure that we actually achieve our goal of ending on time today. Yeah. Might be a first. So we've got 1 minute left. And I just want to say thank you very much to each and every person who took their time out of their very busy day to be with us here to talk about this trend of microvolunteerism. And I really believe that if you learn one thing that helps you, then it was worth it, right? Because that one thing can save you a lot of time. So hopefully you learn more than that. But please do be sure to head to galaxydigital.com and subscribe to our Volunteer Management Insider. It's a bi-monthly resource that we email out with tons of amazing content just like this. And it also is where we make you aware of our monthly webinars. So please do get on that list if you are not a Volunteer Management Insider yet. And again, to reiterate what others have shared, you can reach out to us at info@galaxydigital.com and follow us on LinkedIn at Galaxy Digital Volunteer Management. You'll see there that our product Get Connected, which is our volunteer management software that we've created that does have an app with it as well. It's listed there, and you can discover more about those things. And yeah, we're here to talk to you, and we're here for volunteer managers, and just very grateful for your time and your attention. Please do look for that follow-up email coming out from us at the first of the week. All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much. Have a great day. Take care.